Don't let not having a vegetable garden or allotment stop you from growing fruit, flowers and vegetables if you want to. As long as you have access to a balcony, a small patio, or somewhere where you can hang a hook, you can always grow them in hanging baskets. I like to use coir liners. I found you can get a couple of seasons out of them. They're quite serviceable. And they allow the roots and the plants to breathe. And to stop any drip and staining of hard surfaces underneath the basket, I put a saucer at the bottom. I like to use a general purpose non-peat based potting compost. I don't see the advantages of using the one that's specially made for hanging baskets. I find they put a wetting agent in there and we tend to panic and over wet it a little bit. And I always use 30 centimetre, 12-inch baskets because I find they're not too heavy, they're practical for growing in, and you can hang them, carry around, you can do whatever you want. I've given up using hanging baskets in my garden because the wind blows through and just bangs them against the house wall. It swings them around. The plants get windburn, and I just find it's not worth it. So what I do now, I use them as a sort of liner for pots and containers, as you will see. And here you can see a fuchsia, trailing fuchsia. It's one of the Bella range. This is Sophia. You could fit it in a pot like this. I'm just letting you see how big the container is. But I've got other plans for this fuchsia, as you'll see in a while, so this won't get put into this. But the Bella range, the flowers come very early. I always think of fuchsias as being late season, but these are early summer. And this is what I want to do. Now this, and some of you may have seen in the previous video, this is a self-watering hanging basket. And it's the same size, it's 30 centimetre, 12 inches. And we fill it with exactly the same compost. And you can see the pipe on the far side for just pouring the water in. The one thing you have to be aware of with this and the self-watering troughs is that if it does rain and the water drains through the compost, then obviously the reservoir at the bottom overflows. So you may periodically just need to move the pots somewhere sheltered if it is raining, or just sort of try and drain them out in some way. But you have to be careful with that with the self-watering pots. The reservoir at the bottom does tend to sort of build up. So there we are, we're ready to go. And the fuchsia will stay in this. And what I will do is to stand this down as a tub or an urn somewhere in the garden. And as I say, I don't normally think of fuchsias as being this early in the season. It's 1st of June today. But it's a beautiful plant and it grows quite well. And as I say, all of the flowers themselves point upwards. If you look at it, it's one of the characteristics. They don't hide underneath the leaves. I like to plant fuchsias a little bit deeper than they are growing in the pot. They will then send out other shoots and it gives you an improved display. But one of the main assets of this plant is that all of the flowers are produced well above the foliage. And as you can see, I'm just digging a little bit deeper there to make it fit in. And it's unusual to have a fuchsia flowering this early in the season. I always regard them as being cool weather plants. I associate them with the back end of summer and through autumn. But I'll put this plant now in a shady area, keep it out of direct sun until I'm happy that you can see new growth happening within. It shows that there's a bit of root activity then. Because one of the dangers with newly potted plants is that you put them out and the root system hasn't really got going in enough to sustain the plant. You can see that the plant has been struggling with the heat because it's been kept in a pot that's really too small for the root size it's got now, and some of the flowers have dropped, but that's not a problem, they'll quickly recover. But the other thing you have to look for is the little pods that grow on there, seed pods. They're not poisonous, they look like cherries at some stage, but don't eat them. But just go over the plants and just pick them off periodically to make sure that you don't slow down the flower performance and weaken it. And once this plant has begun to pull away, then I'll give it a weekly feed, half strength of tomato fertilizer. Occasionally I may just put a general fertilizer, liquid fertilizer through it just to help it along. But once it settles down, it should carry right up until the first frosts. The plant itself isn't hardy, so that means it has to be, and this is the advantage of growing in a pot, it has to be allowed to dry off, and then you can bring it into a shed or a room that's frost-free, where you can keep it ticking through the winter time. And really, you don't need to water it until the spring. Now we're looking at growing fruit in a basket, and this is the strawberry rubiam. And obviously, the one thing that attracts you immediately, they're the red flowers. And I've never grown it before, but as I say, I'm just demonstrating. So with these, you will see me putting the pot in a container like this. But remember, you have to take the pot off when you plant them up. But it's a very neat, compact little variety. Produces medium-sized strawberries, but what that means these days, when you get some that are as big as I don't know, an orange, but I can imagine that a basket full of red flowers would look attractive somewhere in the garden. Now vegetables, and this is Tumbling Tom, and it's one of the basket type variety of tomatoes, and it'll just spread. It's determinate, which means it reaches a certain height and then begins to branch, so you don't need to do any stopping or side shooting. But the one thing you have to be very aware of is that never plant any tomato of any kind until it looks like this. The flowers are just beginning to open, you can see the yellow showing. Otherwise, if you pot them on too soon, then all you will get is leaves and no flowers, and you'll be disappointed for the efforts. And now we move on to the really sort of, shall we say, the show bit of it all. And these are Calibrachoas, and they come in little plugs, and we've got 3 plants growing in the plug, and the nurserymen pot them up into pots, and then all you have to do is just plant the lot all together. No thinning, nothing to worry about. And this is Lollipop Mix Trixi. I think they're brilliant because you can see what you get there, the different types, and you get different cultivars as well in other ones. So look for them in the garden centre. They're available, but it's a very, very quick and satisfactory sort of result to make a pot up from these. And these are all freshly potted up. You can see that. But it's hard to believe that actually there are 3 plants in there. It's a 12-inch basket, and you could, at a push, put one in the middle and hope that it would sort of do the business for you. But I either put 2, I prefer to put 3, because that way I think you get more of an even display. Put 3 of them in the basket and wait for them to grow. You don't need to do any pinching out at this stage. It's all been done for you. All you have to do is to let them grow. And the one thing, or the one characteristic I should say, that Calibrachoas have is that what is termed as self-cleaning, which means that they will shed the flowers. But that doesn't mean you can spend all summer sitting in the deck chair. You have to go back and inspect them once in a while, because there's bound to be some flowers that are being held back or just need a bit of a tidy up. And the other thing is, don't overwater them. Water them, let the top of the compost dry up, because with them growing packed so tightly together, there's a strong chance that you could get fungal diseases. So make sure that you get a good airflow around them. And as I say, I will use these in containers, as you see here, just sort of sit them on top. But you can hang these up if you've got a sheltered garden. I've already said that my garden's very windy, and plants just get tossed around. I find it's not worth the effort of trying. So I just use all the baskets. And the other advantage you have with these as well, of course, is that if you're filling a pot and you sort of watered it, then the bottom of the pot just becomes like a sort of peat bog. It really becomes saturated and quite sour. And another important thing is, well, it's also an economic way of using your compost. But I can't think of anything more cheerful than these. They come in all sorts of combinations, and they're all done for you. And all you have to do is plant them up. And as I say, check in your garden centre, have a look. They're there. Thinking about growing in a small space and with a small budget, you can always grow one plant in the middle of a pot. Now, this is a 10-inch, 25-centimetre pot. And you can guarantee that when you put the plant in, it'll spill out over the edge and tumble down the sides. So it would look very, very impressive. And I can't think of anything more cheerful to come home to than one of these little pots covered in colourful flowers. And all you have to do is say hello to it and give it a drink of water every now and again. Calibrachoas are also known as million bells. You may be familiar with those, but you can guarantee that once they start to flower, they will keep flowering for you all through the summer. Just give it a feed. Once again, you can use tomato fertilizer. You can use tomato fertilizer on lots of things in a garden because it encourages flower development. Because tomatoes, obviously, you need flowers to develop before the tomatoes are produced. All that you will have to do is to make sure that the flowers don't set seed. But once again, Calibrachoas take care of that for you because they have this self-cleaning habit. Win-win, really. All you have to do is plant them up, water them, feed them, and then the rest they take care of themselves. What could be easier? Diolch, and thank you for watching. Goodbye for now, but if you would like to see any more, please hit the subscribe and like buttons.